So do you think it's okay to like kill sentient animals just for taste pleasure?
Damn, I'm gonna sound bad, but yeah.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully I don't get roasted online.
No, people are pretty friendly. All right, so hello. I've got a sign that says you should be vegan, come talk to me. You've come and sit down to talk to me.
Yeah.
I know, what was on your mind kind of when you saw my sign and decided to come over here?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I do want to say I don't completely disagree with the idea of veganism. I think veganism definitely has benefits and things like that, but I just don't think it's the complete solution to everything.
Okay.
To me, I think veganism is good, but it's also comes from a place of like privilege, in my opinion.
Okay.
There are many regions of the world that like who have meat as their only source of like protein, and I think it's very important to sort of acknowledge that, like, even though it's good, yeah, I do agree. I will say, like, I think veganism is great. I have seen the benefits of it when I have friends who do it and they like it, something that helps them. But I also think that being completely vegan isn't something, one, that like is a total solution, and two, I don't think it's something for everybody else.
Okay, so quickly, I'm just going to define veganism just so that we're sort of on the same page. It's basically living by the idea that animals aren't ours to use or exploit for like food, clothing, entertainment.
You could eat this apple.
Yeah, go for it. I had someone else eating mushrooms.
Okay.
Like, just earlier. So you mentioned a couple things, right? So you said that veganism isn't a total solution. So like what are you trying to solve? Like what is veganism not the solution to?
I don't know, I guess that would kind of like bring a question out of me, like, what is it that you're trying to propose with veganism? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so kind of what I was saying, like, animals are ours to like use or exploit. So like we don't get to like eat animals, kill them for our food just because we like the way that they taste. We don't get to wear their skin as our clothes just because we like the way that it looks, and we don't get to like put them like in zoos or circuses, you know, for our entertainment. So basically just proposing like an animal exploitation free society because it's cruel to use animals for our means.
Okay, yeah. Well, I will say I agree and disagree. So I agree with the part, like, yeah, I don't think we should be using them for entertainment purposes of like putting them in circuses and stuff like that. I think that is pretty humane. Zoos can have their advantages and disadvantages. Disadvantages being like they don't actually have their habitat that they require to like be themselves in a sense.
Yeah.
But then zoos also hold a lot of conservation.
Yeah.
And they hold a lot of they preserve a lot of species and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. So zoos can be sort of a little bit of a mixed bag, like intention-wise, but I do want to bring it back a little bit more to like the dietary stuff, just because that's the way that like most people typically engage in animal cruelty. I do believe that zoos are overall pretty bad. There's some videos I could also refer you to if you're curious on.
No, absolutely. I definitely agree with you.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, there's definitely animal abuse in zoos, which is unfair. Like I said, they hold their pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna completely agree with like zoos because zoos do have their cons.
Right, for sure.
But when it comes to like dietary, I think I'm just gonna refer back to like what I was saying before. Dietary wise, a lot of people don't really have a lot of access to like fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. Meat has sort of become their only source of protein. All us as human beings, we become herbivores. You know, we eat plants and meat, and that's just become a survival instinct at this point. I don't think that we have to completely abandon meat. I think meat is good for those who kind of like need it or require it, but I don't necessarily think that it needs to be completely substituted by veganism. Do you understand?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I want to go back to the point that you're saying that, like, you know, people in certain parts of the world, you know, that's kind of all that they have. So I'm not talking to people in those parts of the world. I'm talking to, you know, people like you and me.
Totally fair.
We do have sort of the access to those things, and I totally acknowledge that, you know, veganism might very well be downright impossible in certain parts of the world, but that doesn't mean it's right, you know, to kill animals for food, right?
Do you want to like keep the debate more to like the United States?
That is generally what I'm talking about. Yeah, because I wouldn't, you know, tell somebody in a situation that I'm not in, you know, like what I think they can and cannot do. But I do say that it is wrong to do so. But yeah, I think that the question is, you know, you should be vegan, you know. So
now I don't completely disagree. I know that there are benefits to being vegan. There's a lot of like benefit to it. I know a lot of people who have like cardiovascular disease and stuff like that tend to benefit a lot from that, which I do acknowledge. But like I said, I think a lot of it comes like culturally too, you know, like I'm Mexican.
Yeah.
like meat is huge in Mexico.
Right.
You know what I mean? And a lot of places like that, you know, people, they come from Mexico, they come up here to the United States. They just kind of bring those traditions with them and stuff
Absolutely.
like that. The industry of like beef and meat and all that stuff, in a sense, has gone out of hand. I do understand, because you like, you know, YouTube's out there. You know,
Yeah.
we're not going to be out there and lie and be like, oh, that doesn't happen. Yeah, no, there's thousands and thousands of videos of showing evidence that there is animal abuse in like slaughterhouses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, I will say that sort of like an animal becoming food isn't necessarily something that humans have kind of created out of like evil intentions. It's just sort of something that came to be through survival. And I think, to me, it's just like we sort of evolved to be meat eaters and eat like vegetables and fruits and stuff like that.
Yeah. I
Do
was.
you- and so to me, it's just kind of like, yeah, like I said, veganism isn't the total answer, but it's definitely not for everyone. And I think if we kind of put ourselves in a place of like, as like meat is something important that we have in our lives, you know, like God forbid if like all the soil tomorrow becomes like like distilled or whatever, you know, it just kind of stops providing nutrients, and then it's just, you know, we kind of have to like stick to meat. You know, I understand meat isn't for everybody. There are things in there that maybe affect people's like biochemistry and stuff like that, but I still think meat is an important part of being a human being, and it's just sort of part of the natural order of things, right? If it was the other way around, you know, we would become the food. And there's no like, there's really no like sort of controversy between that, because we're kind of like, it becomes a sort of natural order of the world. And I don't, I'm sorry.
You mentioned so many things.
Yeah, sorry. I'll stop, and then we'll just kind of move on.
Okay. No, you're mentioning so many things and wording really track. So I want to address the cultural aspect that you mentioned. So you mentioned being Mexican and that meat being a big part of that culture.
Yeah.
So that is a concern that a lot of people have. They're worried that if they do switch towards veganism, they'll have to give up some of these like cultural aspects of their lives. And there are vegans all across the world, and it is very possible to experience all of the flavors and the culture that you grew up in and that is important to you and your family that is animal friendly. There are, you know, ways to consume the flavors that do not involve animal products. So like, for example, my family are German, and so I'm not frightened about this. So by going vegan, am I less German?
No.
Right.
Right.
So the cultural aspect can be bridged. It's just like with the rest of the habits that we have, we just need to address the ways in which animals are impacted and shift them towards more animal friendly. And then I think the most recent thing you said, I lost track of some of the things in the middle.
It's okay.
So you can bring them back around if you kind of recall what some of them were. But like the natural order of things is kind of what you're saying. You're saying if we don't eat them, we'll become the food. But I don't think cows are going to eat humans, right?
Right.
So like this idea of the natural order of things, the way that we consume and farm animals doesn't really have anything to do with nature, right? And just because something does occur in nature, does that make it okay?
Well, there's a lot of things that aren't okay that occur in nature.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think you kind of misinterpreted some of the things I said. So
Okay.
the thing with the cultural thing, I wasn't saying it in the sense of like, oh, if you don't eat meat, you're less Mexican or you're less German.
Okay.
It was more in the sense of like, this is how we've survived for so long.
Okay.
And now that we're up here, this is kind of like what we've been used to. This is kind of the thing that we sort of like carry with us now.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I do have people in my family who have like looked at like we've been to slaughterhouses and stuff, you know, like family parties and stuff. And then I've one of my sisters, she actually like stopped eating meat because of that.
Oh, okay.
You know, but it's just kind of like, I think the reason why I bring up the cultural thing is because culture is it's very difficult to change. It's just something that just kind of exists and is there and has been formulated through centuries and centuries and centuries of just people kind of like come together and be like, this is what we're going to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you think of anything else that has been done for centuries and centuries that, you know, maybe we've sort of realized over time should be changed?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely like, definitely incarceration has changed a lot with that, you know. Incarceration, things like women's rights and stuff, like those things for a long time were pretty much considered like a bad thing, and now they're really well established to our society, right? But there are certain things, like I don't think food is like culture and food is necessarily a political thing, kind of like. I don't know if honestly I feel just like I'm rambling right now, but
Okay.
you know, like it's just kind of something that they've always used to survive, and they'll continue to use to survive. I think veganism does have benefits. I just think it's a total answer. I don't think total veganism is the answer. I think like you gotta have meat, but you also gotta have a certain.
So you actually don't have to have meat. It's been proven that pretty much anybody can be healthy on a fully plant-based diet. So the question is, if we don't need to be eating meat, is it ethical to kill, you know, other sentient beings basically for taste pleasure, right? Because if we don't need it, we're just doing it because we like the way it tastes.
Yeah, in a sense.
So do you think it's okay to like kill sentient animals just for taste pleasure?
Damn, I'm gonna sound bad, but yeah.
You think so? Could we do anything that we want to an animal as long as we get some
No.
kind of pleasure from it? No?
That's right. That's what I was kind of saying. It's kind of like, you know, the thing with the zoos is like, yeah, they carry a lot of pros, but they also carry a lot of cons.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't mean that we got to get rid of zoos completely.
Okay.
But I think we should definitely fix a lot of things that do happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree? Like, there's a lot of things like animal abuse and like
Yeah.
the industrialization of like beef and stuff like that. They
Yeah.
kind of like made it to such a massive industry to where they've kind of like turned to abuse to be able to control the herds and herds of just animals, right?
So I believe in eradicating all forms of animal exploitation and animal cruelty. So what makes it okay to exploit animals for food, for sensory pleasure, but not to keep them in a zoo for our pleasure? We're kind of one-on-one, but if you'd want to wait, we can talk afterwards.
Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Maybe if you... Oh, yeah, you're welcome to be there or take a seat or wherever's comfortable. Okay, sounds good. So what makes it okay to exploit animals for food, pleasure, but not for, like, viewing pleasure in a zoo? Or, like, in SeaWorld?
Yeah, I would consider like viewing pleasure to be more so like entertainment. You know, like us as human beings, we don't really need entertainment. I would consider like the meat industry more like survival as a part of like our consumption base.
But we agree that we don't need meat to survive.
Oh shit!
That we don't need meat to survive, right? Like we've sort of established that pretty much anybody like you and me, you know, who is not completely just like in a really terrible situation can sort of be healthy on a plant-based diet. So it is just for sensory pleasure, right? Exactly like a zoo basically is.
So then why would we have to go completely vegan? And I understand I understand the basis of the argument. It's just, to me, it just kind of like, and I think this is where we're gonna disagree. To me, it just falls under the order of things.
Okay.
Like we eat, and because we eat plants and meat. On go to meat, we choose beef, stuff like that. To me, I'm not saying like, yeah, it's okay to go like fuck with cows and, you know, treat them like shit.
Okay, but that is what's happening every time that you pay.
It is what's happening. It is what's happening. But then if we kind of look over to just the agriculture side, like that also tends to happen to smaller animals. We're not industrializing their deaths. We're sort of like completely eradicating them to be able to put in a new thing, which is like expand fields and stuff like that.
Yeah, so what do animals that we eat?
Grass.
And they also eat soy and corn and stuff like that, and that also grows on fields.
Right.
So all that sort of small animal death is actually magnified when we choose to eat animals, because they're also fed things like crops and grains and stuff. So by actually...
So it would apply to both?
Yeah, so the animal deaths that you're talking about that happen in crop fields, they are also a result of animal agriculture, because it takes a lot more calories to put into a cow than we would get if we just like ate the food straight off the field, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that I would say that you have to be fully vegan is because every animal wants to live. Every animal is sentient. No animal deserves to sort of just be killed for our pleasure. So that's why I believe in full veganism.
I still disagree.
What part?
I disagree in the part of like, we don't, kind of like in the sense of we're saying like we don't need meat. There are people out there who do need meat.
It's very, very, very few people though, and it's not you, is it?
No, it's not me. No.
So what's your
I'll be
excuse?
like, I'll be okay, but
Yeah.
it also comes from like, if I don't necessarily have to give up meat, and in a sense I really kind of don't want to. You know what I mean?
Right, but you don't want to because you like the way it tastes, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love meat.
So if I liked the sound that came from kicking pigs or torturing pigs, is that okay for me to torture pigs?
No,
Why not?
because it's torture.
But we could say that what animals experience is also torture. You know, pigs are often gassed to death in gas chambers. So that's what happens for bacon. So what if I was just gassing the pigs because I liked the way it sounded?
Yeah, that would be. I think the purpose would also just be different.
But it's sensory pleasure either way, right?
In a sense, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the difference there? Food versus just like the way if I like the way it sounded.
Because one has purpose, the other's just
But the purpose
sadistic.
is pleasure in both ways.
one has like nutritional value, the other has sadistic value.
But we can get nutritional value from other places.
Right,
So
we
it's
totally can.
yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm gonna abandon one nutritional value to substitute it with another course nutritional value. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna completely give up meat just because this also gives it to me. I like meat. I like this. Why can I have both?
because the animals don't deserve to be killed
Yeah.
to be your food.
And I that's exactly where we're gonna agree. I disagree. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. And but it was a nice conversation.
Yeah,
I
do
do
you
have
want to
to
write
get
down?
Huh?
Could I get you to write down a documentary?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to write down Dominion. It's free on YouTube.
Dominion.
Yeah.
Dominion. Thank you.
You've seen Dominion? Okay, great. So we're wrapping up here. We can chat just shortly. And like I said, that one's free on YouTube. And then I also want you to write down, it's by Earthling Ed. And it's called like Earthling Ed's speech. And that's like a 32-minute speech where he kind of goes over some of like the ethical concerns. And yeah, so I want you to think about until you go vegan, which I think you should, you'll be paying for these animals to be killed and exploited and basically lead terrible lives on your behalf. That's pretty shitty. It's pretty bad, isn't it?
The thing, you know? Like it's already kind of happening. And like I said, like the difference with us, sort of like the difference between like a bear hunting for food versus us is that we've industrialized it.
Well, we also have a moral agency, right? So like we can make a choice between right and wrong and bad. So we can say, you know, the bear doesn't really have a choice, kind of like there's a difference between not having a choice and doing something or not doing something, or having the opportunity to make a choice between right and wrong.
I think a lot of it, I will say, does come from survival. I don't think a lot of it is intentionally evil.
I'm not saying that the average person.
No, yeah, I understand, but I'm saying like I think it all kind of like comes down to it all kind of began in a survivalistic manner.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of like stick to that, because we sort of kind of survive through meat.
But we're not in a survival situation.
We're not in a survival situation, but we definitely industrialize that part so we don't have to be in a survival situation. If it became to that point where we got rid of all industrial like farming and stuff like that, then we would have to fend for ourselves. How many people actually know how to fend for themselves? Not many. Like, not many people know how to hunt. Not many people know how to do these things. And I understand that, like, the meat industry does a lot of bad things, right? I will completely agree. But I don't think it is something that we have to completely get rid of. Definitely mitigate a lot of the fucking abuse that exists in there. Absolutely. It's fucking horrid. Like, they do horrible shit to these animals.
One final question. Would you eat a dog?
If it came down to it, I guess.
But, like,
I'd
would you
have
just,
to.
like, eat a dog burger?
Oh, just like if I saw one walking around, I was like, oh, I'm craving dog.
Somebody was, like, handing you a dog burger, would you eat it? What's the moral difference between a pig and a dog?
That's my buddy right there. I can't do that.
What's the moral difference? The morally relevant difference between a dog and a pig?
I think it's just sort of been the way that we've, like, in a sense, kind of, like, labeled animals, too. You know, but, like, we'll label a dog as, like, a companion and not food, but we'll label, like, cows, pigs, and stuff like that as food. But I think, like I said, a lot of it's just really survival. And it all began through survival.
You're not surviving.
No, not now.
No excuses
Not now.
for you?
Not now. But I think a lot of the reason why we're able to not be in a survival phase or in a survival setting is because we have industrialized a lot of things that we would normally do ourselves. A lot of things that, like, processing and manufacturing and all this stuff when it comes to the farming industry. You know, like, we are able to come here in school and not have to worry about, oh, we have cows at home that we have to, like, herd and take care of and all that stuff. Do I completely agree with the way they do things? I don't. I will say that. I don't completely agree with it. And I think that's where we agree. Right?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it comes from, like, it's very easy to sort of, like, transition into another thing when we don't really experience the hardships of, like, getting our own food and getting all these different things, you know? Because it's very easy to, like, go to the supermarket, get whatever you want, whatever, just put in your cart, pay for it, versus, like...
We're very separated.
Exactly, yeah. So that's just my only thing. And that's really the basis of my argument. It's like, It's not great.
Yeah.
Not gonna say it's great. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But it's almost needed.
Well,
like
we've agreed that it isn't needed. We've agreed that we can be nourished off of plant-only foods, right? You keep coming back to this idea of needed, and we don't.
I think why I disagree that's where we disagree, because I do think it's needed. I think it's needed in the sense of like kind of come back to like we're able to come out here to the campus and not have to worry about like farm animals, not have to worry about what I'm gonna have at home, because we could just go to the store and get it. And the reason why we're able to do that is because people have industrialized.
But could we switch that industrialization to plant-based foods?
You could, yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what's happening. You know, there's a lot of like, I buy tofu. I'm not even gonna say you're gonna lie. But,
amazing.
Tofu's bomb. I'm gonna go.
More tofu.
You ever had fried tofu with peanut sauce?
That's my favorite food.
Fire.
Is like one of my favorite foods.
Fire.
It's the best.
Yeah. But that's just sort of my thing, you know.
Yeah.
I think for us it's very easy to be very like, oh yeah, we should make the change, but we kind of don't realize that change comes with a lot of hardship. It comes like a lot of these people who, you know, industrialize the farming industry and stuff like that. They, you know, that's their only way of survival. And in many cases, those farms and agricultural fields come from generations and generations of, you know, family members which they had before.
So do you think the hardship is greater for the people who would kind of maybe have to change their ways as a result of a more plant-based food system, or the hardship of the billions of animals who are sort of tortured and killed to be food every year? Which do you think is a greater hardship? We'll talk shortly.
Yeah. I will say, I think the downfall would occur on both.
Okay.
For sure. People would lose jobs, and then, you know, a lot of animals, people would also not be able to, like, especially nowadays, we're very technological based. A lot of people don't really know how to farm or how to do things. I'm sure they'll learn. I'm sure it'll take some time.
Yeah.
But I think right now, in the current state that we're in, you know, I think, and I still think a lot of that comes from, like, privilege. We're very privileged in being able to have these things at such easy access that we kind of think, like, oh, then it should just be easy to, like, transfer.
Yeah, so
I don't think that's the case. You know what I mean?
I will let you get to class. We're going to agree to disagree. I think that you should use your privilege for good. You know, if you can choose a world with less cruelty and less terror, I think that we should always make that choice. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate you stopping by. And I hope that
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
I want you to think about more why you are resistant to the idea of eating a dog versus a pig. I want you to do that, and then I want you to watch those videos I showed you. Okay, it's free on YouTube.
Dogs don't have pork rinds. I'm sorry.
I'll bring. You know?
I'm kidding. Yeah, it was really great having this conversation with you.
Yeah.
I actually did learn a lot, so I really appreciate it.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for being open-minded. Have a great day.
You too.
Hello, thank you for watching, and welcome to the part of the video where I reflect on the discussion and basically address how I did in the name of improvement. Just a quick funny note to start. I did not realize until I watched it back exactly how closely our outfits matched. We are both wearing white shoes, gray sweatpants, a black sweatshirt, glasses, and a green accessory on our heads. But anyways, first things first, my overall impression of this discussion is that we are kind of talking past each other, and I don't think that we reached any kind of solid conclusion. Their use of the word debate, I think, was pretty telling of the way that they were thinking about our interaction, but I do also think that they were pretty open to and actually also accepted quite a few of the points that I raised. So instead of explaining to them right away what veganism is, I think it could have been interesting to ask what they think that it is and then offer the actual definition after that, just to get a better idea of what definition they had previously been working with. I think this is something I'm going to try to incorporate into all of my outreach conversations, just like asking them what inspired them to stop and sit down with me after seeing the sign in the first place. I think that it'll give some insight into their background and motivations and allow me to customize the conversation to them, which is probably going to be more effective. At the beginning, they also said that they think veganism is great, quote, and I think that there might have been an avenue there to explore what it is they think is great about veganism and why. Honestly though, I think that over the course of the conversation, it was kind of revealed that what they think is great about veganism is the health benefits of a plant-based diet and the fact that it has intentions that they generally think are positive, which in their view is reducing the suffering of animals, neither of which really address the root of veganism. On the topic of zoos, I think it could have been a good opportunity to highlight the experiences of the animals who are trapped in the zoos and talk about their individual experience of spending their lives in animal jail as opposed to just letting the conversation touch on conservation efforts and moving on.
I misspoke when I said that veganism might be downright impossible in some parts of the world. I should have said living completely without contributing to animal exploitation might be impossible in some circumstances, but we can and should still strive towards a future in which they aren't exploited and do our best even in challenging circumstances. I think that that's a far better representation of what veganism is and helps illustrate that veganism is a mindset of rejecting animal use and exploitation rather than perfectly living out a set of principles. Something that kept happening throughout the conversation is that they would kind of just ramble on, and I was a bit too timid. So in future conversations, I'd like to be a bit more assertive and politely interrupt to stop the conversation, to address certain points, rather than allowing it to spiral kind of out of hand in the way that I did here. Also, I'm pretty sure that they misspoke, but it kind of sounded like they said family parties at slaughterhouses or something to that effect at one point. And that is just such an outlandish thought. I was so taken aback that I didn't really pursue this line of conversation further, but I would have been curious to ask what the experience was like for them and how it made them feel. Going to a slaughterhouse is a very intense experience, and I can't help but wonder if there are some like unaddressed feelings to unpack that they maybe just like repressed, but I could also definitely be projecting here, but it is something that I would be curious to ask more questions about, because I can't imagine that that would have been an easy experience, especially considering the fact that their sister stopped eating meat as a result of that. Another question that I would have liked to ask is if they think a vegan world in which animals are not exploited would be preferable if we granted that everybody could be healthy on a plant-based diet and all jobs that rely on animal agriculture could be transitioned to jobs that don't. I think that one of the biggest things I missed in this conversation was getting them to understand or consider things from the animal's point of view. I don't think that they had really internalized the fact that animals can be victims. So looking back, I would have asked if they think it would be okay to do what we do to animals to humans, and then see if there was a way to demonstrate that all the same considerations that we give to humans should also be given to animals based on the characteristics that we share, like the ability to feel pain, have individual experiences, experience happiness, fear, etc. A weird sticking point in this conversation was the like meat is necessary thing. I don't really feel like I addressed that very thoroughly, but I think I kept getting a bit thrown off by the fact that they would agree that it isn't necessary, but then immediately say again that it is. I also focused too much on meat. I wish I'd mentioned that eggs and dairy are equally exploitative and harmful, and maybe even give some examples. Just like in the last outreach conversation I posted, it could have been helpful to ask if they could do away with all forms of animal exploitation other than nutrition, if they truly believed that they need meat, just to move the conversation to a more productive direction. Thank you, Debug Your Brain, for that tip. I also do typically avoid the would you eat a dog question, but I kind of felt like we'd hit a wall, and it was sort of like a last-ditch attempt to try to see what his position on it would be, kind of regarding why he eats some animals but not others. I don't think it was super fruitful, but hopefully it kind of highlighted that the categorizations that we apply to animals are kind of arbitrary, but who knows. Ultimately, I do think it was an alright conversation, and I appreciated that they were open-minded enough to sit down and chat with me in the first place, even though they seemed pretty intent on continuing to not be a vegan, which I think is clearly because they like the way that animal products taste, which I think is a pretty common position. As always, please let me know if you have any notes or suggestions of your own. I always find it super helpful to hear from other people on how they would approach these conversations. I'm super grateful to everybody who has left helpful and thoughtful comments on some of my previous outreach conversations. Thank you very much for watching. Stay mindful, eat fruit, and don't multiply. I will see you in the next video.